This is John Abrams, and this is The Variety Artist, episode 35. This one takes a peek into the mind of a creative genius. If you perform for any audience, you're going to get tons of ideas on how to get that audience into your own world. Fascinating stuff. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your phone or mobile device. It really helps me a lot. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. They're offering you, the Variety Artist, a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at thevarietyartist.com/book. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Just go to thevarietyartist.com/book right after this podcast and get your free audiobook. Now, let's start the show.
Welcome to The Variety Artist, providing aspiring artists and entertainers with in-depth discussions from top performers from all over the world. So get ready to book some gigs, make some money, and have some fun with your host, John Abrams.
He's a spectacular ventriloquist that specializes in curriculum-based assembly programs and unexpectedly entertaining family events. He's performed at Vent Haven Convention, the KIDabra Conference, CAX, Puppeteers of America festivals, and at Puppet Guild events. He's a mover and shaker in the vent world. Variety artist, I give you Steve Petra.
Hello, John. Nice to be here with you today.
I'm glad you're here, Steve.
Me too.
Now, we're going to talk about puppets and live performances and the school market and philosophies of comedy. We're talking about all sorts of crazy stuff.
Oh, it sounds great.
I think people may want to get to know you a little better. Tell us about your home life. What does that look like?
My home life is essentially preparing for performances.
That's it?
Yeah. Me and my wife run the business. We used to perform together, my wife Jeannie and I.
Yep.
Not as event. We did more traditional puppeteering in a very large puppet stage that was about 15 feet wide. There were about 8 characters in every show. I scored everything with the music, and we split the characters up between ourselves. So it was a very labor-intensive, stressful kind of performance. Over time, my wife Jeannie suggested that I become a ventriloquist because she thought that the format of the puppet stage was of another generation and that it needed to be interactive, not just for the sake of our business, for the sake of the audience. Every so often, you should listen to your wife.
Yeah, you think? Well, now you mentioned something about being doing some music. Were you a musician before?
Yeah, I was a musician since I was like 15 years old. I was working as a musician.
What type of stuff did you do?
I started out as a guitar player, so I essentially left college to play music in bars.
Oh, I'm sure your parents love that, huh?
You know what? They realized there's just no redirecting me off of my path. The result was they were supportive, which was good because at 15 I didn't have a driver's license and I had amplifiers that were bigger than me and I needed someone with a station wagon.
So how did you get to the gigs?
With my father's station wagon.
Oh,
until I was old enough to drive.
Wait, so did your dad take you or did you drive without a license?
No, my dad would take me.
Oh.
And then when I got into a band that was working, the other band members would come and get me and bring me. I guess I was worth the effort.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is I interviewed Steve Axtell, Paul Romani, and Hal Myers, and a number of other people, and a lot of them started off as musicians.
That's interesting. I know about Steve Axtell, but I didn't know about the other guys. That's interesting.
A lot of them talk about how they use the discipline they learned playing instruments, and they put them in their particular art, whatever it may be.
Interestingly enough, it's not just the discipline. It's also the creative process that's within my DNA is that of a musician or a composer. I look at my relationship with the audience the same way as well, which I often find myself having to explain to other performers, puppeteers, vents, and magicians what that process is because it's very functional, it's very flexible.
What is the process?
There's an organic nature to it. So it accommodates different situations and changes, but I'm thinking like a composer. So I'm thinking of things in musical terms. the pacing, where something starts, the different movements within it. Most important, where it's going to end. I end all my shows with a finale piece that involves the entire audience. I know there's a new movie out about Queen, about Freddie Mercury, and there's a clip of Brian May being a guitar player. He's one of my favorites, talking about creating a song that for the audience to perform. Well, that's what I've been doing since I've been doing vent shows.
And the big finale at the end, that's the smart way of going. Is that way people walk out singing your song or...
But I'm using that as a format because I'm thinking I'm writing for the audience.
Yeah.
I can only do that because I have enough experience to know how they think.
Mm-hmm.
This is like an interesting thought that's always like swimming through my mental process. When I went to see Steve Axtell, we spent like 2 days together, and we did a bunch of fun stuff. But we really made it productive as well. But I was on my way. I says, I've never been to California before. I've never been to Disneyland. Steve's advice to me was one sentence. He says, when you go there, try to get into Disney's head. And I wasn't sure what he meant, but once I got there, I did. This entire park is a man's imagination, and he's bringing you into it. Once you step over the threshold, you're in the imagination of this creative genius. Mm-hmm. And I know exactly what Steve was saying now, and it's set up almost like a template in my creative structure. People have said, you're great at getting into kids' heads. And I said, no, it's the opposite. I strive to get them into my head, because once an audience comes into your head, you're the artist. They're in your art. And then they experience all that you have to offer. Your talent is on display, your creativity, your imagination, and it's a gift to them. Mm-hmm. There was an interview with Patti LuPone. It wasn't even an interview. She was interacting with young theatrical students. And she sat down with this one girl, and she said something I'll never forget. She said, when you're doing this performance on this stage, we're talking about live performance, which relates to what we're doing now.
Yeah.
She said, what you're doing, you're giving it to them. And you're not giving it, it's not yours. This is my performance. You're not doing it for them. You're giving it to them. It's a gift that they go home with. And that really brought clarity to what I do when I walk on the stage now.
That's a great philosophy. I love that. So what took you from musician to puppeteer or ventriloquist?
Interesting. I was working in a wedding band. So, I'd spent years playing guitar in different bands, and then I became a percussionist, and I did a lot of work as a percussionist. I got real obsessive. I'm an obsessive person. When I married my wife, Jeannie, she was a real Muppet aficionado. She had all this behind-the-scenes stuff and this book called Of Muppets and Men. Mm. It was all the 5 personalities of the 5 Muppeteers that were in that one-of-a-kind in the universe event that happened.
Yeah.
I became obsessed with it. When Jeannie showed me this stuff and showed me how to listen and hear tell which puppeteer was doing which voice.
Yeah.
I found I was able to do that. The best musicians have to be able to hear. I can distinguish who is doing what voice, even though each of them were capable of doing a dozen or more different characters. I realized I was connected with this and somehow.
Did you start emulating them, or did you start doing your own thing? Or
I emulated them as just to amuse myself, but I was more interested in the process and the mixture of the movements of puppetry, which to me was very much like guitar. You got the left hand operating the rods, and I'm a left-handed guitarist, so that's my left hand picking, and the right hand is doing the detail work of the mouth and body movement. And it just was very natural for me to put my hand in that position. Eventually, I sent them an audition tape, and they had me come down for a week of on-camera training, and then called me back again.
You sent who in an audition tape?
Henson Productions.
Okay.
They would do these Muppet workshops where they have people come down that had submitted material that they liked. Jane Henson was running this particular group of sessions with a few people from the studio there and from Sesame Street. Everything was on-camera work. A lot of it was improvisation. But I had already trained myself to work on camera
Hmm.
At that time, everybody's phone wasn't a camera that you can reverse the screen.
Oh, yeah.
I had to borrow one and do it on the television, which is exactly how they did it in Muppets. The image is reversed. So when you put your hand up and your puppet is on screen, when you move your hand to the right, the puppet moves to the left
Oh.
on screen, which if you have to literally train your brain to reverse that so you can perform.
Huh.
Otherwise, if you're not standing straight, your puppet's not straight, in order to correct it, your brain will move it in the wrong direction.
Wow.
So you're actually like creating new synapses in your brain. And if you can't do that, you get eliminated right away. But I had spent like 2 months doing that, and there's no quick way of doing it. You have to do it day after day after day after day.
Right. So if you take a live performance and you put it in front of a camera, you have to actually think about what you're doing every second.
Yes. And so, see, Henson changed everything. That's like my major influence as a puppeteer. And I try to take what I learned there and learn from him and what he did and bring it on stage. Before Jim Henson, when there was puppetry on television, there was a proscenium. There was a puppet stage. They would film the performance. Henson eliminated the puppet stage. He made the screen the stage, and he made it so the performer, the puppeteer, would see in a monitor what he was doing. So now you're seeing from the audience. You're your own audience. Your brain is evaluating the emotional content and the nuance of your performance, and you're adjusting and learning every time you put your hand up in front of the camera.
Right.
Completely different, and people got it immediately.
Yeah.
That puppet could look at the camera, and he used all the different parts of the television screen instead of the puppet stage. All the height and width and depth of the television screen became the landscape.
So that completely changed everything.
Yeah. I studied puppetry with a woman called Carol Fijan. Once I got interested, I found a super competent teacher here. And one of the things was to use the stage.
Mm-hmm.
When I became a vent, that was it. Nobody was using the stage. They would have something, it would sit on a table and it would talk, and which is fine. I just had a different vision.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting because as an actor, you're taught, that was my experience before becoming a magician. You're taught to use everything on the stage.
Yes. And, magicians and ventriloquists, we are largely an undirected theatrical entity.
Right.
When you're in theater, and puppet theater is part of theater, you were not undirected. So I was used to getting this direction in quite a severe way from Carol Fijan. She also pushed me into becoming a professional as well. I was learning about theater instead of writing scripts for event puppets. So my preparation for participating in the art form was different than a good number of people who were doing it at the time.
Right. When we think of our art, whatever it may be, whether it's ventriloquism or magic, if we think of it in a theatrical sense, it's thinking a lot more out of the box than thinking about the traditional way it's been done for the last 500 years.
That's an interesting subject in itself.
Yeah.
The idea of converting from doing a puppet performance in a stage to doing event performance on stage to accommodate the conversion of the typical audience from being passive to being an involved audience.
Yep.
But sometimes you have to bridge that for them. I used to do a warm-up thing at the beginning of the show. Now, as soon as people start, if I've got a dozen people in the audience, the first 10, I could do 15 minutes of just doing what I call personality pieces with the audience that are really funny, a lot of unexpected narrative magic things that establish the relationship with me and them. By the time I'm done with that, they're in my head, to refer back to what we were saying earlier. By the time I start the show, they're in my head. And I found that having material that is written and performed just for that purpose, for me, it now is essential. 10 years ago, wouldn't have mattered that much, but now it's so specifically applied for me. And it makes such a difference in the outcome of the entire show.
It makes the rest of the show easier.
Yeah, and by the time I come out with a puppet, It's rocking. It's already rocking. If you go see Jeff Dunham,
Yeah.
Jeff does like 45 minutes stand-up before he brings a puppet out.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but everybody's got their own style and their own method of involving their audience and making sure they want more when they're finished.
So how did you get involved in this school market?
And that was actually the first thing I did.
Oh.
I was still working as a musician, I was doing a lot of gigs. I was in a good wedding band. People look at wedding bands. I was in a great band. It was 7 pieces. The musicians, they were not only great musicians, they were great entertainers. And it was a really good musical experience, but I got bit by the puppetry bug. We were studying with Carol Fijan. We were studying in her classes, my wife and I, and someone called her from a school that needed a puppet program written for their original character development curriculum.
Okay.
So the faculty and the principal created their own character program. They wanted a performance based on what they did, which that's a pretty demanding thing.
Demanding, but how perfect for you to be able to use your imagination and come up with something original or use their original ideas.
It was a golden opportunity, and it was also the golden gateway for us. So Carol said, well, I only know 2 people who can write that well, Steve and Jeannie. And she hooked up the principal with us, and he made his pitch, what they could pay. It was at the end of the school year. They wanted it for the beginning of the following year, so we had the summer to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They sent me the materials, and Jeannie and I went over it, found out that, you know what, I'm really good at taking material that is curriculum material and turning it into something, both visual and entertaining and even musical. So we wrote this little musical based on principles that they were teaching the kids, made it really funny with cave people.
Okay.
We called it Cave Town. And they said, if this goes well, we'll recommend you to other schools. Well, we did the performance. They were blown away. If I look at it now, it's pretty modest, but it was very imaginative. We were guessing. We didn't have a background in education, but I think we had natural abilities in looking at material and understanding how to convey it.
So do you still do the caveman show?
No, we did 2 character shows, Cave Town and Zigzag Island. Zigzag Island was much better than Cave Town. And then we did one more after that called Attack of the Reading Robots, which had like 9 characters, tons of music in it. I have a picture of the stage. It had like all these different compartments to come out for characters to come in and out of this space. It was this space station. Each character represented an element of reading, reading for fun, reading for education. There were, like reading directions. Each thing was represented by a different robot or a different character on the space station, which was pretty ambitious. But that was the last thing. That from that point on, I took over doing vent shows, and my first ventriloquist school show was "It's Alive: How Our Organs Work,"
which is a great show. You have that on video. I watched it. I didn't watch the whole show because you don't have the whole show on your website, but I watched portions of it. It's terrific. Your puppets are original and fun and goofy, and your interaction with them is terrific.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's the only show that I completely pictured in my head. I started drawing what the characters would look like, and then I started building them because I'm not a great puppet builder, but I didn't know what I couldn't do, so I just came up with ways of creating what I drew.
Yeah.
There are no patterns for any of the puppets. When I have to rebuild them or repair them, I have to sort of figure it out as I go. The only thing I didn't build on that is the mouth on top of the esophagus on the digestive system, which is Steve Axtell's mouth.
Okay.
Not his own personal.
Well, it's not really Steve Axtell's mouth. I understand.
Right. But
call him up every time and go, I have a show coming up. Can I use your mouth for a little while?
Right. And, here's a schedule. We're gigging 3 times this week in Connecticut. Can you just show up, you and your mouth?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm hearing from you, and it's kind of different from a lot of folks that start out, a lot of magicians, vents, they look at what has been done in the past and they'll use a vent puppet from the past or a magic trick from the past or some juggling item from the past. Whereas when you started out making original puppets.
Interesting. I just thought, I didn't look at it in context with everything that's been done before. So this came out of my own creative whirlwind at the time. And I said, well, how do I make what's in my head come out on stage?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I started doing that show in 2000, and I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
And I love doing that show. What I didn't know was that the brain was going to be a breakout character. And now the brain hosts all the school shows, which is great because there's a lot of advice I didn't listen to in putting that show together. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, it's an entire stage of stuff. Tell you what inspired me. There's a book written by Valentine Vox. I think it's called I Can See Your Lips Moving. And it's a great, really great look at the history of ventriloquism and how it's moved in different aspects, pre-vaudeville to vaudeville to television and so on. And there was a picture of a ventriloquist called John W. Cooper, African-American ventriloquist, who actually was on a circuit where he had a lot of white audiences. He was very highly regarded. And at that time, they did a stage performance. It wasn't it was before ventriloquist would use a dummy. And he had his barbershop set. And he had like wires with foot pedals and different things at different parts of the set would talk. While he was giving a haircut to one, something would pop out of the thing that heated up the towels. And I said, I want to make something like that. And if you look at it's a live set and look at John W. Cooper, if you Google him, you'll see there's one picture available of his barbershop stage set. I left all the stuff on stage after I was done with it. Oh. I didn't know not to do that. When I'm finished with the show, all the stuff is still up on stage. So kids are memorizing all these parts of the body because it never leaves the stage. It just doesn't talk until I walk over to it.
Oh, that's great.
And I didn't think not to do that. I said, this is how I'm going to do it. I didn't have a history with the tried and true ventriloquism performance techniques.
Yeah, so sometimes it's almost better to not know traditions at the beginning, so that way you think way out of the box.
It can be. It depends on what you come up with.
That's how I came up with a lot of my stuff. Actually, when I started becoming a magician, I worked for a magician, but I had never actually gone to a magic show. I had never seen another magician perform.
What age was that?
I was like 29. So I had a lot of theatrical experience. I was doing magic shows as a theatrical experience. So similar to what you were doing.
Very similar.
I'm telling you, you and I are kindred spirits. I swear.
And also, I started doing this and well into my 30s.
Oh, and I started at 29.
Yeah.
And then later, it is good to study all the masters later when you already have your shows put together, because then you understand easier ways of doing things.
And you know what else? By that time, you have a voracious appetite for all that came before.
Yeah.
It is just like this glorious fun and fulfilling to just pour through this and take it all in and understand it. One of the most satisfying things was finding out more about the art form.
Yeah.
Jay Johnson, one of my absolute favorite ventriloquists and a great human being, he won a Tony for his Broadway show, The Two and Only. That show was off Broadway before. It was at the Atlantic Theater in New York. I used to just hop on the train and go. I was what you call a serial attender. I would just keep going to the show because that instilled in me a devotion to more excellence, mm-hmm. better technique, me becoming a better ventriloquist. When people are looking at at my face, at my mouth, looking for things, for me to, I really need to sharpen the technique side of what I'm doing. Because once you get a reaction from an audience, so many performers will say, well, the audience likes it. At that point, they become not open to improvement. I don't think that's good for the art form. I understand their inclination to feel that way, but I would encourage them. You know what? There's ways of doing it without moving your lips, even with this hard stuff. But you have to devote yourself to that part of the process as well.
Mm-hmm.
Jay really held that. I said, you know what? It's shameful to ignore that kind of development. If I am really an artist, if I do have something original to bring, I owe it to my audience to do better with that part of it as well. And that also gives me a wider range of tools now on stage, where I can have things talking, where I'm right at the front of the stage and there are things talking from the trunks, and it just adds to the theatrical velocity of what's transpiring. It just makes things funnier and more unexpected.
Now, Jay Johnson,
yes.
He's speaking at CAX this year, right?
Probably. He's been at CAX maybe even every time it's been there.
Are you there this year?
I am not there, no.
Oh, but you spoke there a number of times, right?
I was there at the first one.
Oh, at the first one. I'm going to be there for the first time this year.
Oh, you're going to love it.
Oh, I'm excited about it.
You're going to love it. You have every reason to be excited.
I am.
And you not only will you not be disappointed, it will exceed your expectations.
Is that true?
Yeah, because of the people.
And by the way, anybody who's listening to this who wants to come up and say hello, come visit CAX and say hello.
You won't regret it. Are you in California?
I'm in California. I'm in Southern California.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm in New York, so it's more of an event for me to get over there and get back.
Oh yeah, I'll be able to actually drive there and drive home if I need to.
Oh, that's wonderful.
All right, we're going to move on to a fact or something John just made up.
Is it fact? Or is it something John just made up?
I'm going to read a headline, and you're going to tell me whether it's true or not. If it is true, tell me a little bit about it.
Okay.
First headline. Steve spent 3 days running errands, performing music gigs, shopping, etc., all in a gorilla suit.
Did you say in a gorilla suit?
I said in a gorilla suit.
All right, that's preposterous. However, it's true.
True and preposterous.
Yes.
What made you decide to do that?
Because I went by a costume store and I saw it. So I walked in. I said, what if I rent this for Friday night? I want to go do the band owned their own club. So it wasn't like we didn't have to move equipment and stuff. So it was really a great gig. And I was playing I was playing percussion then. So I was playing congas, bongos, vibes, and a bunch of other stuff. So I said, what if I show up in the gorilla suit? I can pretty much play. If I take the hands off, I can do everything I'm doing and just show up and play in a gorilla suit for the whole night. So I said, what would it cost me to rent it? And he gave me the price. He said, well, you have to rent it for the whole weekend because that's how we do weekend rentals.
Yeah.
So I says, so I have to have it for 3 days. And he says, yeah. I says, all right. I said, I'm going to take it. I said to myself, I'm going to get my money's worth out of this. I'm going to use it every single day for something. I did. I not only did the gig, I had friends that worked in a flea market.
Uh-huh.
So I had someone drive me to the flea market, and I went to the flea market and just tore apart everything in that flea market as a gorilla. And I discovered something. If you're wearing a gorilla suit, you can do whatever you want in public. No one stopped me. I went to all of these vendors, and I would throw in their stuff up in the air, and you know what they did?
They laughed.
The other vendors begged me to come to their spot. Because wherever I went, a whole bunch of people came.
Oh.
I'm tossing their stuff in the air. I'm taking food out of people's hands. I took an ice cream cone from a kid, and his parents loved it. They wanted me to do it again. Can you give it back to them and take it again so we can take a picture? And they didn't have phones then. And people had little film cameras. I don't know why they brought it to the flea market.
Yeah.
And then we went to Carvel.
Oh yeah, ice cream place.
Yeah, and I went in there with my wife at the time. Stood online like human beings, only I was in a gorilla suit. And when it came to the counter, I would try to order in gorilla speak, and she would translate, he wants a banana sundae.
Oh, that's great.
And she just made that up. That was a great translation. So, and then my friend had one of those Volkswagen buses where they had the roof open in the top before everybody had moonroofs anyway. And I was hanging out of that thing driving around. My wife at the time also worked at some ad agency, and they were having a business meeting in the morning. So I showed up at the business meeting.
In your gorilla suit?
Well, her boss, first she introduced me to her boss, and he invited me into the meeting. Oh. And he says, don't come in first. I want to introduce you as a new class of employee we're creating within the company to increase productivity. So he made this pitch for me to come in. And I'm standing on the tables. I'm pulling people's ties off. So 3 days as a gorilla, you can do whatever you want wherever you go.
All I can picture in my head is once this podcast drops, just hundreds of gorillas all over the United States, just going and doing things in gorilla suits.
One of my favorite moments at the flea market, there was a woman trying to leave in her car, and you have to drive through like a crowd of people if you want to leave early. So I jumped on her car. I climbed up to the roof of her car. Her window's open. I'm laying on the roof, reach my arm down, and I'm beeping her horn. And I hear through the fur and latex on my head, I hear her saying, I can't believe this is happening to me. That is one of the gems in my memory of my entire lifetime.
There's a gorilla on my car.
That was her response. She goes, I can't believe this is happening. To provide that kind of experience for a person, I mean, that's a privilege.
What a great memory. All right, we're going to go to the next one. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I don't know. Give me a second to recover after that one. All right, here we go. On a whim, Steve decided to shave his beard and cut his hair really short. When he got home, the neighbors immediately called the police because they thought a stranger was breaking into Steve's house.
I have to think, because I did break into my house.
Oh!
And my new neighbor, who didn't know who I was, came over with a hammer. However, it's not true.
Oh,
the breaking in is true, but you just hit on that out of sheer luck. I never shaved my beard and cut my hair short.
But your neighbor did think you were breaking into your house.
Yeah, he did, and he came over with a hammer. And I'm friends with that guy to this day. What a great human being.
All right, next one. Steve decided it would be a good idea to meet Frank Zappa, so he sent him a letter written in calligraphy on parchment paper in an enema bag.
Wait. So, written in calligraphy?
Yes, on parchment paper.
On parchment paper.
But in an enema bag.
Oh, that is so true.
Okay.
Every detail of that is true.
So how did you come up with the enema bag? I mean, the other stuff is kind of normal, but...
Well, I wanted to get a reply.
Yeah, that'll do it.
So I was a big Frank Zappa fan. I like his creative process. I like the way the originality works. There are certain things that I've learned from him that still serve me well, and other things I wouldn't even repeat in public. But I said, what can I put it in? I'm writing like a resume, and I actually taught myself. This took me months to teach yourself calligraphy with a calligraphy pen.
Okay.
You know how many times I threw the ink at the wall and then had to clean it up?
Oh.
Because if you make one mistake, you have to start all over. I finally completed it. I says, now this, if I put it like I had a photograph of me playing, not in the gorilla suit, but in a different outfit. Mm-hmm. And then I had an answer page that said, Steve Petra is a jerk. Don't bother me. We can work out an audition. Contact me. And I taped the pencil to it so he could check one off, and put a self-addressed envelope. Uh-huh. And I said, what am I going to put this in? And I said, I put it in like a file, like a resume. I said, it's betraying all the work that went before.
Right, and it'll hit the trash really fast.
And I said, so I got this big, it was quite large. It was like almost like I guess it was like a hot water bottle looking thing, and it was rubber. And I slid it with a razor blade to make it so it hinged open like a book. And I trimmed the pages to fit inside of it, and then I closed it with Band-Aids.
Okay.
And then sent it off to him, and then maybe 3 weeks later, I look in my mailbox, and there's my self-addressed envelope.
Nice.
With his recognizable signature in the return address thing.
So what did he say?
He said, yeah, we got back. Steve Vai got me backstage. Nobody knew who he was. He was just like an 18-year-old kid with pink hair.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's a guitar legend. He got me backstage because I gave him my card, and he said, yeah, Frank knows who you are. Come back. And we talked for like 10 minutes.
Wow. Yeah, Frank knows who you are. You're the enema bag guy.
I'm the enema bag guy. And he allowed me to come to a rehearsal 2 days later at the Palladium in New York City.
Wow.
And I got to watch a rehearsal and realize, you know what? I don't have the memory capacity to do this thing that I'm embarking upon.
Mm.
The cool thing to take away from that is here's this guy that was like really famous. People wanted to talk to him, and he's like literally a genius. He had no schooling, and he's composing for orchestras. And when we were talking together, it was just me and him. There were other people around, but he was not distracted by anything. I had like his full attention. And I said, that's how you deal with people. When you're talking to a kid after a performance, you give them your full attention. You're not looking over their shoulders to see what's going on in the back. You give them your full attention. And I think that's a really good thing for performers to keep in mind.
Yeah, there's a couple of great lessons in there. That one that you just gave, but also the enema bag. I hate to keep bringing that up, but but it cut through the clutter because the guy gets 25, 30, 50 letters every single day saying, oh, give me a piece of your attention. Read this. Look at this. But when he gets something interesting and it cuts through all the clutter, he's like, oh, well, this looks interesting.
Yeah, that's a good way to word what was going on in my head. And that's what I was hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
Once I sent it out, I figured I better not be thinking about getting a reply.
All right, we're going to go on to the next one. When Steve was 16, he made a life-size puppet of his science teacher and used it in a school talent show. After the show, the teacher called a conference with Steve's parents.
Ooh. Conferences with parents and teachers are frightening things.
Yep.
No, that's not me. By that time, it was just guitars.
Okay.
But that's a good one.
You were keeping me in suspense, man.
Well, you wrote it. You shouldn't be in suspense.
Yeah. I knew the answer.
Unless you're thinking, maybe he did do that.
Yeah, maybe he did. Yeah, well, the first one I made up, your neighbor actually did come over.
That's true.
Yeah, so you never know.
I did break into my house.
That's right. All right, last one. During a musical audition, Steve fell off stage, bringing the piano with him.
If that's true, that would be my performing horror story.
Oh.
And it is true.
Tell me about that.
I was in a show band. Show band, you did 3 dance sets, and you did 2 floor shows. And you had to have fancy clothes. The girls wore sequin gowns. We had these different changes of clothing. And I was playing guitar, vibes, congas, and I had a sound effects table. So I was surrounded on 4 sides by instruments.
Okay.
I was playing everything I could possibly play in this band. And we were at an audition for a big hotel chain in the Washington, D.C. area. And if we got this audition, we'd be playing the whole chain, which was great because we did this floor show. It was really, we had 3 singers in the front, 2 girls and a guy, and 4 musicians. And we're doing Broadway tunes. It was very involved. So occasionally the singers during the dance sets would borrow one of my percussion instruments, in this case, the tambourine. But this was an audition. We had a set that we're doing just for this. When we did a couple of the dance songs, the girl who played piano, who was set up next to me, had borrowed my tambourine and left it under the piano. And I needed it. We had a song coming up, and I needed that tambourine for a segment in the song where I was doing all these different sound effects. So I realized I was calculating, all right, I have about 30, 40 seconds where I don't need to make any sound.
Okay.
I can just reach over and grab it. But when I did, there was wires taped between where I was standing and where the tambourine was laying on the piano, and they weren't really actually taped that well, and I tripped over it.
Oh no.
I don't know if my hand ever landed on the tambourine. All of a sudden time slowed down, like space, the final frontier. And my body is moving forward, and the piano makes contact with my chest, and the piano goes forward in slow motion, and the piano goes into the back of one of the singers.
Oh no.
I'm rolling on the floor in front of the bandstand. The piano is toppled on upside down. Two of the singers go down, and all the microphone stands. Bing, 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 like 3 in a row.
Like dominoes.
It was like slow motion horror dominoes.
So wait, you knocked over yourself, the piano, and a bunch of singers?
Yes, in sequin gowns.
All in one shot.
It's much better. If you're going to knock over someone, it's better to knock over someone with a sequin gown. There's so much more value.
If you're going to do it big. But that was serious.
So being time was already slowed down, I could think of what could be the good side of this. And all I could come up with is, well, maybe they'll want more. We didn't get any gigs from that.
I was just about to ask that.
That was fact. Or something John just made up.
We're going to go right into some fan questions. You ready for some fan questions, Steve?
I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be.
Okay. Michael Warsham, a wonderful entertainer out of Maryland, says, please ask Steve if he knows of any entertainers who have a very good puppet routine or show, but who are not ventriloquists.
You know, my background is in puppetry.
Right.
I was not a vent when I started. So you can find a great number of superb puppet performances that are not vent. There are magicians that I've come across that have incorporated a puppet in their show.
Mm.
In fact, one just uses a hand puppet. Sammy Smith, you have to know who he is.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He does a routine with a puppet in the hat that I've seen. I find that magicians can be very, very attentive to artistic detail in a performance.
Mm-hmm.
And he applied that to his puppet performance, and every movement had meaning, and it was very, very effective. In fact, I have two friends of mine who are magicians, Tim Sonnefeld and Barry Mitchell. Neither of them are vents, but they use puppets in a vent style where they're on stage with the puppet, and they do it very effectively. And like Sammy Smith, they give great attention to the detail of their script and the movements that they're doing. But becoming a ventriloquist and utilizing the tool set that comes with it opens up possibilities that you could only imagine. And when you do imagine them, you can find a way to execute them.
Yeah, makes sense.
Audiences want to see something that they don't expect. People like surprises.
Eddie Rice Jr., a clown and stilt walker and man of many talents out of Southern California, asks, or he says actually, I love puppets and incorporate them in all my school shows. Right now, they're used only to interact with other performers. How do you go about creating a storyline where the puppets are the whole show?
Oh, that's very interesting. If you're talking about a school show,
yeah,
and there's educational marks that you have to hit, what I do is I immerse myself in the content, not the art.
Right, as well as I do.
So the concepts that are grade level appropriate for the different versions of this show I'm creating, I have to describe how my brain works. You know, most people have compartments. I don't have compartments. And do you remember the Titanic?
Oh, yeah.
You remember how it sank?
Yep.
it got sliced across its compartments.
Yeah.
So that's the danger I'm facing psychologically every day of my life, because I have no compartments. And,
Okay.
and I can just get overwhelmed. So everything is in a big room. It's the big room brain.
Mhm.
Everything's in a big room. So once something's in there, it's accessible, and I can join it to something that someone else might not have thought to join it to.
Ah.
So if you pour this stuff in, the material, the concepts, whether it be literacy, math, like the biology, what I'm doing with that show,
Yeah.
then all those doors are open.
I like this concept of one big room instead of a bunch of little compartments in your brain. Because if you have the little compartments, maybe some of the compartments are shut off. But if you have this big giant room like you're talking about, you have everything at your access, at your fingertips. So you're more open to all of those different things.
Right. That's why, as you've noticed, talking to me can be an adventure, because I'll change subjects on a whim.
Wait, I'm inside your brain.
That's right. There are several exits that I will point to. Your seat can also function as a flotation device.
Exactly.
I have a system that I like. I have to create a new library show every year.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have all these educational marks, but information becomes material in my head. So I try to find what's funny about something. I call it facts to fun. If I'm doing an animal puppet, I'll find out facts about the animal. I'll make it and I'll look at what's funny about that.
Mm.
I take the research and look for what could be funny about certain things. And it could be anything. I did one with a ladybug,
Uh-huh.
and found that the word pupa is funny.
That is funny.
And now it's funny on video because I did it. I had Axtel's the cooked turkey.
Yeah.
I bought a Halloween costume for a dog that was a ladybug costume.
Okay.
So I brought him out as a ladybug. But he was a turkey. He's an actor, and he's playing the ladybug. He's Lady McBug, I think it was. And then when I take the ladybug suit off, he's a cooked turkey, and it gets into the whole thing. But I went through these 4 points about ladybugs, and each one, the turkey managed to make it funny.
Ah.
So if you just say facts to fun, you just do that.
Facts to fun.
It starts to roll on its own.
Mm-hmm.
There's an article that was recently put out about kids not laughing so much at punchlines, but at things that are unexpected. Rather than go with the cheap laughs, to integrate the unexpected, the kids, they pay attention to relationships. So you always have a relationship with a puppet. So if I'm doing just puppets, the first puppet that comes out, I call the alpha puppet. I create a dynamic with the alpha puppet. This is to address the question, which you probably didn't think I was going to get back to.
Yeah, no, I knew you was.
I use the alpha puppet to create the running gag, whether it be visual, verbal, or both. And then when the puppet goes back, it continues to interact from the trunk, which is one of my stages of development. I have other puppets that represent different aspects of the theme. Now, if it's not a school show, you have a theme. There are aspects of a theme that can be represented with a puppet character. It doesn't have to be real obvious. It could be really a bizarre connection.
Well, yeah, you're talking about the cooked turkey and is completely different than a ladybug.
There's a reason I was able to do that. I have this thing called conceptual elasticity.
Mm-hmm.
That I look at a concept and I see, how can I stretch this to make it fit my needs?
Yep.
Without creating a strain on the audience's observation of what's happening. How do I make this flow? So here's why the turkey ended up in the bug suit. Axtel came out with the cooked turkey. I liked it. I want 2 of them.
Okay.
What am I going to do with it? That's it.
Okay.
The turkey wanted to be an actor. The only gig he can get was to be in my show dressed in a ladybug suit.
Okay.
I don't have to explain it. The setup has to be smooth enough that the audience is going to buy it. And they have nothing to compare it to because it's ridiculous and I made it up.
And the audience accepts it. They go, okay, yeah, turkey wants to be an actor. All right. Yeah.
Right. So that's how I move from one puppet to another. That's just one way.
Okay.
I realized that it's funnier. I get bigger laughs, I get deeper laughs, I get better laughs, and more of them if I'm the protagonist. And I'll simplify my definition of that. Things in the show are happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
Something in the trick has to happen to you. And then that's funny. I listen to a lot of stuff that comedians talk about because they see the world in it more in a way that I do. Their life experience, their performance experience is more akin to mine than any other normal or otherwise deformed human being on the face of the earth. And Jerry Seinfeld he says this great thing about laughs. He said, there's a power in making someone laugh that doesn't exist anywhere else in life. People can clap. You can manipulate people into clapping. You can manipulate people into standing ovation, but you can't manipulate someone into a laugh.
It's true. What
they're doing physiologically is they're involuntarily expelling air from their body. These are Seinfeld's words. And once you get someone to do that, and you do it over and over and over again, and the cause of them doing that, the catalyst for that is continually unexpected. I mean, that's a hero.
Yeah.
They're going to leave. They're going to remember it. They're going to tell their friends, and they're going to come back for more. And if it's a family, it's a privilege that families come together to see my shows, and everybody enjoys it.
All right, since we've been talking about a lot about Steve Axtell, he has a couple of questions for you.
Oh, he does he?
Yes, he does.
Well, let's hear what they are.
Steve Axtell says, and by the way, he's from Axtell Expressions. If you don't know Steve Axtell, look him up. Look up Axtell Expressions. I think it's steveaxtell.com or axtellexpressions.com. Ask Steve, meaning you, Steve, not Steve Axtell. Ask him about his obsession with eyebrows.
I do have an obsession with eyebrows, but it's multidimensional. First, with a puppet, it's like the last thing when I build a puppet, it's the last thing I put, and it's like the most important thing in the character. The eye focus as a given is essential.
Right.
But the eyebrows just add something extra that speak from where the puppet is coming from. And I don't know why that is. It's just something about eyebrows. I modified a lot of his puppets. My new DVD will have all modifications on it. It's going to be called Making It Different. Mm-hmm. But eyebrows are my favorite thing because sometimes I just need the puppet to look a little edgier.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. His possum puppet. I says, well, we're in New York. There are possums here on Long Island, and in New York City, they have big rats. So this sort of looks like a rat. All it needs is eyebrows. Are you seeing how this works?
Yeah.
So I have never performed that thing as a possum. It's always been you dirty rat. And I have a detective show, and there's a poster of him. He's wanted. His crime is he hiccups pickles, and you can see the eyebrows on him. And the poster's up there throughout the whole show, and we have to uncover clues to find you dirty rat. At the end of the show, we expose him and we arrest him. But that's a very good example of eyebrows. Oh, here's something that comes from Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
When Zappa puts these little filigree things musically and melodically and harmonically and rhythmically, to another person it would be an embellishment. But he calls them eyebrows. And the work is not finished until the eyebrows are on.
Ah.
So it also resonates in my musical DNA.
So let's talk about your DVDs real quick. You have, 3 that I saw, probably more. Let's Build a Show and Let's Get Visual and the lecture video. All 3 look fascinating.
Oh, well, thank you. The first one I produced was Let's Get Visual.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to teach ventriloquism. You can learn ventriloquism in any of a half a dozen places. And you know what? You have to really practice hard.
Yeah.
I figure, how can I teach what I'm doing? The things that you and I have just talked about.
Yes.
But instead of this rambling fashion that my brain tends to work in, how can I make it into like a methodology? How can I dissect what I'm doing and draw from it essential points that become instructive, that another person can use it. I found a way to look at what I do in performances, what works consistently, and dissect why it works. Everything I do is explained in the studio, all the props and the intentions and the setups and what I'm thinking. Each concept, each step, each ingredient has live performance to show how it works with an audience.
And then how does that differ from Let's Build a Show then?
I had them both in mind at the same time. Let's Build a Show takes one show. It does what I did with Let's Get Visual, but within one show. It has specificity in different areas because I'm dealing with the audience, how the audience follows the show, how I'm using the magic, how I'm transitioning from one thing to another, the different concepts of using a puppet and the audience at the same time, which I call like the triangle of power, and how power transfers from the performer to the puppet to the audience. I'm teaching my version of theatrical concepts in a way that's presented as a meal with different courses, so it's easy to consume, and more importantly, so another performer is able to apply it. As a matter of fact, it's the detective show.
Oh, is it?
It's the detective show with You Dirty Rat.
And what about your lecture video?
I lectured at the Ventriloquist Convention. I think it was 2013. It was after I came out with Let's Get Visual, so it was the Let's Get Visual lecture. It recovers some material that's in Let's Get Visual. Usually when I recover something that I've done before, I'm adding more nuance, and I'm always discovering new aspects of each thing. 70% of it is stuff I didn't cover at all. I did the lecture twice, so a friend of mine filmed it, so I combined both to make this all-inclusive of all lecture material version, which I edited. I supplemented it with some live footage when I'm talking about different techniques. You can go back to. I am sold out currently on the lecture video, but I'm going to have more made, and I should have them in January.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Steve, for doing my podcast. You're an awesome interview. You're an awesome guy.
Thank you. I enjoyed you as well.
Thank you. And where can someone get a hold of you for one of those DVDs or anything?
My DVDs are on the store page. My website is petrapuppets.com or stevepetra.com. We'll leave you to the same website. If you click on store, you'll see my DVDs there. If someone wants to consult with me privately, my email is petrapuppets@yahoo.com.
And thanks to all my variety artists. If you found this podcast valuable, tell a friend. That's how we can spread the word. Also, make sure to get your free audiobook from audible.com. Just go to thevarietyartist.com/book to get your first book for free. You can reach me at my email at john@thevarietyartist.com or join my Facebook group at The Variety Artist, where you can ask me to ask questions of our wonderful guests like my friend Steve. My name is John Abrams, and I am the host of The Variety Artist. Now go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.
That's all for this episode of The Variety Artist, but your journey continues on our website. Go to thevarietyartist.com for more strategies, insight, and resources, as well as show notes on today's guest to assist you in your career. We'll see you on the next episode of The Variety Artist. But until then, go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.